Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests on. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. We know her as our clinical, organizationally, and forensically trained psychologist. She is also the president and co-founder of A.M. and Associates, the president and founder of Celeste Productions, Inc. She is the immediate past president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation Board. She is currently a trustee of the Michigan Health Council. And with all of that, she is also an author and musician. Good evening, Dr. Angie. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. How are you?
I am great. So it is Wednesday. I am excited because we are talking about mental wellness and the benefits. And so let me tell you why I chose this topic for you, because you are our expert on everything wellness and whole. So we just witnessed the Queen's funeral over 7-10 days or maybe 12 days. I forget. And it was interesting because I started thinking, how many people have trepidation when someone in their family dies? Especially in America, we have lots of families that are fractured for a variety of reasons. We will have people who will say, oh, my grandmother passed and I got to go down south, or I got to go out west, or I got to go to the east, or wherever it is and go to this funeral. And I'm going to see people that I don't necessarily get along with because maybe, we had some shouting matches, or as I like to give my example, they stole my red truck in 1973, my red truck, and I'm still upset about it. And it was interesting to me because we have this dynamic that we keep hearing about. And it's interesting how many people have put their own spin on the Sussexes, which is Harry and Meghan. And now we have Prince and Princess of Wales, which is William and Kate. And now we have King Charles, and how all of these different pieces seem to not get along. And I just started thinking, I was watching Harry. I thought it was beautiful. Some of the pomp and circumstance and the very the orderly way that they did a lot of things, where they had different people standing outside of the coffin and they were there. I don't know if the right word is to observe or to stand guard, like as in a vigil. I thought that was very moving. But there were so many things that we heard about Harry not being able to wear his military uniform because he's not a working royal. We heard about other people having to sit behind William and Kate, which was Harry and Meghan. And then, of course, during the funeral, there was the famous candle that blocked her view, and people were saying, was that intentional? Was it not? And then
Meghan's view.
Yes, where we couldn't necessarily see her live on national television. And then, of course, she was widely photographed for her beautiful outfit. That hat was just that cape dress. I was just like, wow, just the whole thing was just put together very well. But underneath all of that, we saw this stoicism where they had to keep their emotions in check. You would see people cry, but it wouldn't be like at a traditional funeral, where sometimes we see people get really excited and throw themselves on the coffin or fall out, or all these different, you might see a lone tear fall and people would say they're composed. And I thought, wow, where is the mental wellness in that? And I understand that, the United Kingdom is a different country, a different place. It's a series of countries, but Britain in particular. But I just thought about it in terms of everyday people. Dr. Angie, explain to us, first off, what mental wellness is, what are the benefits of it, and why it's important for us to have joy. So I gave you 3 questions.
What is mental wellness? Why it's important to have it, and what is joy?
Yes.
Nice, big, juicy questions to dive into.
Exactly.
Well, I would, starting with the first one, what is mental wellness? Because we're talking about oftentimes intangible things, when we talk about the mind and what's going on in our brains and all that, it can be a little harder to grasp what that looks like, so to speak, as compared to when we're talking about physical wellness. So I like to make a comparison to physical wellness to help clarify and help us get our arms around it a little bit more. So if we think about physical wellness, there are different aspects to it, or a series of different things. It has to do with your ability to, we think of fighting off disease when we talk about a strong immune system. It's the ability to function in day-to-day life and get through the things we need to get through without feeling debilitated, like you're stopped from doing what you need to do. I think that in this day and age, we've expanded it. We, meaning, many people in the medical communities, in the social sciences like myself, we've expanded what that looks like, because we are including people who might have a disability, but they're able to still do, with help and assistance, able to still live their lives to the fullest that they can. And that's all a part of wellness too. Doesn't mean that you may not, just like with any machine or any mechanism, you have breakdowns at times, but wellness, physical wellness, also has to do with your resiliency. So you may cut yourself or break your arm or something like that, but if you're able to mend and bounce back from it, or keep going forward, things like that. And mental wellness is similar or very much the same. So mental wellness also has to do with your ability to think clearly in terms of understanding, knowing, who you are, where you are at any given time. If you're able to think through problems, if you're able to figure things out to help yourself move forward when you get stuck, or if you're faced with something that is challenging. And as with physical well-being, resilience, mental resilience is a part of mental wellness also. We talked lots of times about the challenges of life, and it's very natural sometimes to feel sad or down or upset or angry or anxious, even a little, depressed or fearful. All of those things are part of responding to life, to stimuli, as we say, or stressors. But it's how we respond and our resiliency, our mental ability to work through it and be able to, continue on forward and to work towards regaining mental clarity about, okay, what do I need to do next? Problem solve it, those kind of things. So I think like that's a little short version of what mental wellness might look like. And then your second question about why it's important. Well, we don't want to just live and survive. We want to thrive. And before we came on today, you and I were talking about plant life, right?
Yes.
And greenery and nature, and we see it all around us. Everything from animals to plants, even coral reefs in the ocean.
Yes.
It looks like it just sits there, but we know that we've learned now that there's a whole life going on where coral reefs take in nutrients and all of that. They need oxygen that's in the water. So mental wellness and well-being is important for thriving and being able to continue to grow, not get stuck in those challenges. Like I said, are a natural part of life. But when we start to get stuck in them and we're finding it difficult to move forward past them in a healthy way, healthy meaning we're figuring out how to grow from it. We're not constantly focusing on negative things that negatively impact not only our mental health, but our physical well-being and emotions. So it's important for us to be able to thrive in life, move forward, grow, and that impacts everything from your personal relationship, starts with your relationship with yourself. So your personal relationships, your work life, your family, your children, all of the things that you do in life are impacted in some way by mental wellness or non-wellness. So it's very, very important for quality of life and for the things that you want to accomplish, or the things that you're wanting to pursue and realize. And like I keep repeating the word grow, to keep growing in life. So very, very, very important. And also I would say mental wellness is important for getting untangled from some of those not so healthy relationships and some of those not so healthy workplace situations. That mental clarity of being able to, look at a situation, call it what it is, or at least try to work on figuring out what you need to do next. So that takes mental clarity and mental wellness to help you do that. And then joy.
Yes.
Where does joy fit into all of that? Well, I actually, I didn't, for your audience, I didn't know she was going to ask that question. I didn't know she was going to ask this question. But I did have a quote standing by for this discussion I would like to share, which I think answers that last question.
Yes, please.
Very well. So this is from my book. See, the poster, my book, Freedom: What is the Experience of Living Without Negative Self-Imposed Limitations? And in chapter 1, where I'm, doing the preamble to talk about why I did this research and why I wanted to really look into resilience and people's ability to not be limited, or rather more, for my research was more so not stay limited. How do you climb out of limited thinking and feeling limited in your relationships? And there's a quote in the beginning where I'm talking about some of my own experiences in life and my way of thinking about this. And what I talked about was, excuse me a moment, things that I had learned at the time, because I wrote this when I was in my 20s, actually. Things that I had learned about resilience and joy, the importance of joy. So what I wrote was, one of the most valuable lessons that I learned from my family is to never stop being in awe of life. This means a lot to me because I have learned and am learning to live with positive self-imposed choices. I view the world differently than I would have, excuse me, if any of my perceptions were more limiting. Allowing myself to feel freedom of exploring my options in life keeps life new. And then this last part, as I stay excited about life, I discover new things to enjoy. That last part especially. Joy builds on joy. Limitations tend to build on limitations. You know how when you start thinking negatively on itself, it's like, one thing goes wrong, and then it's like, oh, well, of course this is going to go wrong too. Then you start looking for things like, well, let's just, and what you find, we've all had this experience where we then stop looking for the sunshine and we start expecting and looking for, and then even if we don't intend to, helping to bring about more negative outcomes. And it's the same, it's opposite side of the mirror there with joy. Same process in the opposite direction. You start to look for, as I was saying in the quote, you start to look for opportunities. You start to expect joyfulness. So joy is so important for mental well-being. I think it just goes hand in hand. Now, I will say that joy doesn't have to necessarily mean that you're, leaping in the air at all times. Excuse me. Everyone has a different personality. Some people tend to be a little more subdued, naturally, and some people are more bubbly, and everyone's different. But just generally speaking, joy is a key part, I would say, of inspiring and motivating us to seek out the positive. And the more we seek it out, like anything else, the more we tend to find it. You know how they say, if you're looking for trouble, you'll find it.
Yes, yes.
If you're looking for joy, you'll find it. So joy is really important for a lot of things. And one of which is when you are mentally in those spaces where you are feeling down or anxious or, upset. Joy, I have found, helps us to practice looking for the way out of that, looking for the positive thought, even if it's just one little thing. So that joy it's like food. It's like nourishment. It's like, for me, it's like mental nourishment, I would say.
So I am so happy that you gave that quote in the example, because I kept thinking, Harry was like, I have my family. I have Megan. I have my 2 children. I'm okay. I'm sad that, yes, this is the queen, but this is my grandmother. She has passed. I've had a long life with her. I may not get along with my brother for whatever the reasons are. I may not get along with my father for whatever the reasons are, but I'm here because this is part of my duty of what I'm supposed to do. But I'm looking forward to the fact I have a wife, I have 2 children, I get to go home. There is joy in that. And what was interesting to me, it was almost as if, how can I say it? It was almost as if we keep this sort of in our sights, that this is the end goal. We just got to get through. And I think it's very important, because when regular people have a funeral and situations are toxic, whether it was abuse, whether there was violence, whether there was crime, or it was just grandma and auntie didn't get along because grandma said that auntie didn't know how to make that chocolate cake, and auntie swore up and down that that chocolate cake was good. And every time we got to Thanksgiving, that chocolate cake was always dry. And grandma said, see, you don't know how to make it. And it starts into a big battle.
That's
I know.
right. Yeah, or the big,
but it starts
the annual argument, right?
The annual argument. And it's funny because I have friends who will go home and they'll say, yeah, we got relatives that just like to fight just over anything. They just want to argue and go at it. And then we'll tell you, but that's how we love each other. And they're like, but that's not normal. And normal, it depends on situation. Exactly. In quotation marks. But I get it. It's the energy that it is expended to get through whatever the situation is. And for some of us, we like peace. For others, they thrive in chaos. And so, Dr. Angie, give us some suggestions on funerals, family reunions, just different things where family comes together. Even if it's Thanksgiving and Uncle Joe is going to come and Uncle Joe is going to wear his Trump shirt with his Make America Great Again hat. And we know that everybody's going to come. And of course, we got cousin Susie. Susie has married a Latino man, and he happens to be Mexican. Now, I know I'm giving you some exaggerated situations, but I'm basing them on real life people that I do know who have relatives. Because I have a particular friend who she's like, I got tired of going home for Thanksgiving and Christmas because of such and such was over. It was always going to turn political. And because they don't look at me as being a Latina, but they look at my husband because he's brown skinned as being Latino. Nobody filters. They just say whatever, and it comes off very uncaring, very condescending, and just, not kind. And so it ruins the entire family reunion or get together, period. And no one wants to be bothered.
Yeah. Well, one thing is, we know that oftentimes for families, those events, those celebrations, those times are sometimes the only times that they'll see each other all year, or they don't see each other very often. So that stuff that's unresolved, that's under the surface, that's when it comes out. Unfortunately, there's a couple things I think that families can try to do and work on that can be helpful. One is, usually, just like you described, it's not what's that? Well, it's not all the Hatfields and all the McCoys.
Yes.
Usually it's not everybody. It's just like you described. It's usually that same one or two people. So one thing that that families can work on is reaching out to those folks at other times during the year, which they don't normally do.
Right.
And trying to work some of that stuff out. Maybe even, invite them out to have a conversation, maybe do so with counseling or therapy to have some, work some stuff out. That's one thing, is to try to get at the issues away from those celebration times, so it's not all imploding on that day. Number one. Number two, sometimes these things are or oftentimes it's like you described with grandma and I, these are lifelong issues that may not be resolved ever, depending on who they may be, or they're not going to be resolved, quickly. So it's an ongoing thing as people grow. So a second thing people can do is to talk with that one or two folks. Again, away from before Thanksgiving, like now, or whatever, start now, before the Christmas dinner, and try to see if you can work on setting boundaries before you get there about what you're going to talk about, what you're not going to talk about. Can we agree to not? Doesn't mean I'm not trying to shut you up. Doesn't mean you can't talk about it and get it off your chest. But can we agree not to do it there or then? And try to set up something where we can have some of that out, because I know how painful that can be. And especially, I'm the kind of person, if someone's like me, it's like it just niggles at me, and I just really want to get this thing cleared up. And it can sadden you if you see someone going down the wrong road, or you feel the wrong road, or whatever the case. I'm also a witness, though. I have to say, we hear people say this all the time. Well, you can't change folks, but God can. And I am an absolute witness to. I have seen people change. I have seen family members change with love, persistence, ongoing prayer. I have seen it over the years with more than one person. So that's another thing I think for families. Recognize that, acknowledge that this saddens you, and acknowledge that this hurts. Sometimes that's part of the problem too, is you don't want to admit that this hurts your feeling. Like, this hurts. I'm not hurt. Listen, I just don't like what she said. Well, okay, it could be both. Your feelings are hurt, and you don't like what she said. So I think that self-work, how am I feeling about it? Myself. That's, and really I should start with that. Like that's number one. What can I live with, and what can't I live with?
Yes.
Can I try to reach out to the person and say, I don't want to fight with you. I love you. Can we not talk about politics? Well, I'm gonna have to bring it up, whatever. Okay, so they may agree. They may say, no, I have to bring it up. And then based on their response, then you have to decide your next step as far as boundaries. There another way people might deal with it is that they agree in advance, and maybe they will start with the person or a couple of people who cause all the trouble all the time, or in their opinion, and they may have a legitimate. That family member who always brings something up may have something legitimate that they've just never gotten resolved. There's that too, that it can help to acknowledge, again, if you maybe if you can do it before you all get together. Maybe that's not possible. Maybe it's when they're there, but sometimes it can make such a difference to that person for somebody in the room to say, I am so sorry that you're upset about that. Like no one ever told them that in 25, 40 years. So that can help too. It doesn't mean you're agreeing with them if you disagree, but to reach out to that person. All these things can help lower the temperature, as they say, for that celebration. Try to reach out in advance. Agree to maybe not talk about some subjects on that day, but you'll still address them at other times. Look at yourself and acknowledge that this is hurting your feelings and how you feel about it. I know for myself personally, I have learned through the years. I've learned from my grandma, my mom. I have learned my great aunt, I've just learned to remember that God changes hearts, and to do my praying where it does some good, some talking, and then talk with them, as the opportunity is there to do so, but don't force it. And just like, and a lot of times, little by little, give people some shakiness, some time to grow. But yeah, acknowledging yourself, try to talk with a person, agreeing not to address some things at the dinner table, and then also talking with other members of the family. So if it's always those same two cousins, or whenever your brother and blah get together, so maybe talk with a couple of the other people, like the host, the elders in the family, the ones that everybody listens to. Maybe talk to them in advance, and agree that, if somebody brings that up or everything, lovingly, how are we going to handle it? It may be, I might suggest lovingly agree that we'll all say, well, you know what, that's really important, but let's talk about that later.
Right.
This cake is so good. Let's not talk about the voting right now. Yes. Let's talk about that next Tuesday. Okay. I hear you. Okay. I look forward to that conversation. So, gotta be a little political and strategic with it. Agree in advance. A lot of times it helps not to stoke it. So if everybody agrees in advance, or some of the main folks, not main, but
the people involved. People
involved maybe agree that they're going to lovingly change the subject, and it can make it worse to you don't want to make people feel isolated. So I don't mean change the subject, just not acknowledge that they're talking. I don't think that's helpful. Although I know it's a temptation, but just to say, come up with whatever strategies work for that person. Maybe give them a compliment and say, let's talk about that later, because I don't want to fight with you. Or not. It's not a fight. I just want to, know how come you keep voting for so and so. You know what? I have to think about that. I'll get back to you. I'll pray on that. And then you just move on to the potato salad. You just try to avoid me. No, really. Let me just take some time, because I really want to give you a good answer. Would you pass this? The cranberry sauce. This is so good. So, did you all see that latest episode of? And then ultimately, like we said before, if none of that is, if it's just too upsetting, and for some people it's truly traumatizing. If it's just too traumatizing, then get your excuses ready. Gotta go. Maybe again. Like we talked about, because I know you brought this up last year, and I'm glad that you do. It's important to bring it up every, as we go into every season. There are ongoing issues for people. It doesn't always have to be. I know sometimes it feels like it has to be, but it's not always quite an either or, black and white. I was mentioning before, there may be your mom and other people there, that your brother, different ones that you miss, and you want to see them. And you don't want that friction or that other person or people to run you away from there. One suggestion is to go. Go, but maybe have a time limit. Go and kiss your mom on the cheek and give her a squeeze and spend a little time, and maybe give yourself a time limit where you have to leave, or arrange for, like I was saying before, have that person, so-and-so's picking me up and such and such time. So you have an out. Yeah, you gotta go. That way you get to spend some time, but maybe not leave, or try any of those things. Different things for different families, but just generally speaking, if we're talking about humanity, and most humans do not want to feel invalidated or ignored. Most humans don't want to feel that you're treating them as if their feelings don't matter. And it's important, again, even the most agitated, the person who's doing all the agitation, they may want attention. They may really feel that they've never been heard. Whatever their issues are, maybe they're just mean. Whatever their issues are,
and sometimes that's what it is.
So, yeah, sometimes they just feed off the meanness. Love is a powerful thing. I know it sounds cliche, but love is a very powerful thing, and you can sometimes love that moment out of them and shock them by just putting your arms around them and telling them how much you love them. And what I was saying, do ignore, but what I meant was don't ignore the person, but if you could figure out ways to get away from the toxicity while at the same time embracing the person. That's not easy for everyone, and it takes a lot of self-work to do it, especially when someone's being some kind of way towards you.
Exactly.
But, it's an option, if a person feels that they're able to do that, if they have that kind of relationship where they can just say, you know what, I tell me about what's going on in your life. I really, I miss you. If they're doing it for attention or whatever their reasons are, sometimes just engaging them in another way. A lot of these behaviors in families, they're habits. And you alluded to that. That's just what we do. It's habits. Habits are learned, and they can be unlearned, and they can be replaced with other habits. So sometimes maybe rather than thinking you have to be the one to run away, if you feel you need to do that to protect yourself, totally understandable. But do some inner work and ask yourself some questions and think, well, can I be part of the change? It may not all happen right now, but like start, a little change towards a new habit, so that when they start up, you just say, you know what, I love you so much. Tell me what's going on in your life right now. And gently, lovingly steer them.
So now, Dr. Angie, I'm going to be the angel's advocate. What happens when you don't get that apology or that conversation before, and everybody's like, you just need to get over it, just let it go? How do you heal? Because the last question I want to get to is, what does thriving look like? How do we get to that place?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because a lot of weary family members do ask that question. They're like, why won't you just like move on? And I often feel that I understand why people say that. The person does need to move on, but I often feel that people aren't recognizing that you're talking to someone who's bleeding. They've been bleeding emotionally there's not a time limit on bleeding if it's never bandaged. There's not a time limit on bleeding if it's never, sutured up, if the poison is not coming out,
right,
taken out of it. So I understand why people say it. And yes, I agree, the person, needs to move on for themselves as well as for everybody else. They're, constantly hurting themselves, but they need a couple of things to be able to do that. And if they haven't gotten it or haven't accepted it or whatever, that can be difficult to do. So you're there and they're doing their thing and people want them to move on. How can the person heal from it? The one that's creating all the trouble and everything?
No, the person who's on the receiving end of it. So
the receiving end of it. Okay.
So when you're the one who's in the toxic situation, and and we've used this scenario before, yeah, you're a vice president, you make all this money, but your mama's still living down here and you only come down once or twice a year. What's that? You think you better than everyone? And people don't want to come because they don't want to engage. And it might not even be what people are saying, or it could be this particular person wanted to do better for themselves. Their family members did not. And they choose to live a different way. And because they live a different way in a variety of ways, people look at them and say, oh, all these different things. Or you just go off and decide, I want to paint pictures, or I want to make music. And people are like, but we're doctors and teachers and lawyers and psychologists. You want to be an artist? Oh, you want to be broke. You want to be broke. Okay. Here, Hazel, here's your broke daughter coming. She coming to fix her plate. Y'all put the Tupperware up because she gonna take everything. And it's things like that. And so it becomes exhausting to the person. And like you said, these are habits. And these are things that occur in families and they get repeated each generation. And I often tell people, when people share things with me about families, I'm like, okay, well, where did that start? I don't even know, Kim. And I'm like, that's exactly the point. Probably no one knows. This probably started by your great grandma or your grandparents' generation. It trickled down to your parents' generation because they experienced it. But now all these family squabbles are coming from 2 generations before, but the younger generation is still egging it on. And you're like, well, what are you talking about? You don't even know what it's about.
Exactly. And it's so some of the answer is in what I was saying about responding a little differently than you normally would, because in order to maintain the habit, everyone, like you're saying, everyone has to, or the main characters have to participate in it. That for those of you who may remember vinyl records, although a lot of the young millennials, they're like them, buying those vinyls and getting the record.
They're like $30, right? Dr. Angie. I've been in Target and I've seen vinyl records. I'm sorry, we got to talk about it for a minute. vinyl records, it's ridiculous. And they'll come out with a vinyl record that's like 40 years old and put it for $35. I'm like, really? This is in my parents' collection.
Okay, exactly.
I'm not knocking it, but I'm just like, dude, when we all just had records, not CDs, because yes, I remember when it was just records. You had a record player. And you had to be an expert at putting that needle down.
Needle, exactly. And that's needle is what I was about to mention.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm. That, that needle that skirts. Sometimes it just takes one person to interrupt that habit, that family habit, to go in a different direction. Oh, here comes your broke daughter. One question to ask is, well, how do I normally respond when they do it?
Right.
How do I normally respond? A lot of times nobody will say anything, or they roll your eyes and just take the pain, or an argument starts. So sometimes, or oftentimes, a different response can help usher in at least the beginnings of changing those habits. So if the habit has been, when they come in the door and they say that stuff, okay, well, here comes the argument, and you don't engage in the argument, then that can take people aback. But there's two things. There's not engaging in the argument, and then there's also setting up your boundaries, because on the one hand, God can change anyone, which is true. Yes. But also we are responsible for ourselves. So if you walk in and you would not allow a stranger or other people to put you down, or you insist upon being respected, then, don't you need to insist upon that from your family? And a lot of times what makes those wounds, those attacks on you from your family just continue. One of the things that helps it to continue, not saying it's the person's fault, is the tacit, quiet, silent, giving them permission to keep doing that. So if you walk in, here comes your broke daughter. Well, okay, I would suggest to mom, why maybe you should respond and don't let them say that. But walking up to the person and looking at them and saying, you know what, speaking slowly, pausing, looking into the eye. They'll start fidgeting right there. Right. They'll start fidgeting right there. You know what? I hope I never talk to you in the way you just talked to me, because I don't want to disrespect you and you just disrespected me. I'd like you to stop doing that. And then go on, and I'm now going to go and get the food that's available for my no money having self. Excuse me. And then go get your—
Wait a minute. Wait. Ink pen.
Right. My dad used to do. My mom was queen of lowering that voice. Where you had to lean in if you were to hear what she was going to say. Now she had a that bright mouth that I could hear, but she would lower that voice.
You was like, "Ooh, we in trouble."
Something, yeah. And she would do it with the adults as well, same thing. So something that puts a skip in that record. If you usually engage in the argument with them, have that conversation with yourself before you go in. And I know it's not easy. It's a temptation. It's your habit too, if you've been a part of that. But work on things like, well, why do I respond? Well, because they're disrespecting me. Okay, are there other options? Do I have other ways? Not why do you respond, but why do I respond in the way I do? Do you have other ways of addressing it? Can you talk quietly? Can you say to them, while you take the high road, would you please stop disrespecting me? Do you mind? How's that disrespect? You ain't got no money. No, I don't have any money. Are you bothered by that? Bother you don't have money? It's about you that you don't have money. You want to talk about? You want to talk about someone?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. That was what your Aunt Bertha said. She said you didn't have no money.
Okay, I see. Well, how are you doing? How's your health? How are you doing? How are you doing? The people don't know. They start scratching because you're not following the script. And there is a whole theory of psychology, literally around scripts and family scripts, like family therapy, where they talk about that. If someone, or maybe it's you, whoever the person out there, is that person in the family, maybe it's you that's going to refuse to participate in that script in that way and kind of rip your page up and say, I'm not going to not going to engage in the argument. I'm going to, or maybe you're the person who never responds and lets them just say anything about you. And this time you actually say a little something. Sometimes people are, I don't want to do that, because then they'll really start screaming. Mm-hmm. So you may, one way to heal is you may say what you need to say and set your boundaries. And if everybody piles on you, then that may be the time in which you say, you know what, I'll take a little of that, I'm leaving now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be ripping up the script. Wait a minute, you're leaving? Yeah, I'm not gonna, because they're used to you staying. Whatever it is, a good place to start with healing and making some change is asking yourself, well, okay, we know what they do. They always true. What do you always do? Mm-hmm. And then looking at, okay, are there some better ways where I might deal with that? And maybe talk with somebody you trust about that. Like I said, it could be a professional, it doesn't have to be a close friend, someone you can bounce those things off of, someone who's a part of your support network. Because sometimes, people outside the family, a lot of times will see things that you may not see or could have considered. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And it's just, and it's like anything else. It's ongoing. It's an ongoing growth project. It's ongoing work, to find what happens. But the first step I would say is doing like this wonderful platform that you put this out here several weeks early. And you start, you don't wait until those holiday times, ask yourself those questions, see what work you can do, away from those events, see if you can come to some consensus, even if it's not an apology. Can you agree not to talk about certain things, or do talk about them later, or at another time? Can you have allies? That's where the allies in the family, maybe that one or two folks who will stand up with you and say, well, we're not going to argue about that. Whatever, you just, but try some different things to start to see if you can make a change in those scripts. Okay. And that kind of, it helps you feel like you're getting your power back a little bit, that you don't have to just go through that.
So now that we have our power back, now that we've done some growing and some maturing, and we've spoken up for ourselves and we've healed, what does thriving look like? And why is joy and love an important part of that?
Well, you know what? If we look at the pre-healing, the pre, and everything we were just talking about, the disruption, the chaos, the hurt feelings, the screaming, the crying, the high blood pressure, all that, the feeling bad, the anger, feeling that it's ruined, the event is, the celebration, all those negative things. The importance of thriving and joy and all of that helps to combat and like tamp down each one of those things. It won't be we're not talking about a perfect life, of course, but the opposite of that is what thriving looks like. Where, again, circling back to your first question about what mental wellness looks like. A lot of times we have to teach our family members, we're learning, we're always learning what that looks like. So coming into that Thanksgiving or that Christmas celebration where, how some families will say, we used to have those arguments, but we just decided as a family, they worked on that, or one or two did. And then as one or two, and that happens a lot too, as thriving looks like, as one or two may start to do that. Others feel they can see that, oh, okay, well, all right, fine. And I won't either, or whatever, So thriving can look like we are actively doing and saying and thinking things that are more loving of each other in the family, and, family and friends, everyone at the table, where we're supporting it. Thriving looks like we're supporting ourselves in what we're going through. Thriving looks like we're validating our feelings. We're acknowledging that this is, that we need healing, that we deserve, as humans, at the very minimum we deserve is respect. Just have some respect of us as a person, as a human being, and that others deserve to have it. That's what thriving looks like. So that it may, we're not looking for the perfect family, but if arguments and things come up, we can resolve them, at least for the moment, during the celebration, without insulting each other, without putting each other down. Thriving looks like knowing how to argue in a way that doesn't cause irreparable harm and damage to each other. We can argue with each other without dragging each other through the mud, and a lot of times families don't know what that looks like. So we get some help with that, again, with therapy, counseling, etc. So yeah, thriving looks like acknowledging our weaknesses, embracing our strengths, and supporting ourselves and each other, to continue to grow. And there's joy in all of that. Again, back to the beginning of our conversation, if you're thriving looks like looking for that joy, looking for, and like we say, relationships require work. Looking at it, and I can hear some of your audience say, well, yes, but it also requires both parties. You're right. That's true. You are right. And if the other party just refuses, but the joy, like I say, it's a habit. So if you work on a mentality of, seeking reminding yourself of the value in each of the people, even the ones that are driving you crazy or who are insulting, you tend to have more joy, because you tend to be more thankful for, at least I had some time with the person before they went down. Or at least we still can talk about this, even if we can't talk about that. Or I'm so thankful, thankfulness, joy, all that. It helps you move forward. And it's just part and parcel of thriving. It's part of thriving, yeah. Because once you heal or are healing on that road, then you just keep going up, because you keep getting stronger and working on finding what works, getting rid of what doesn't, messing up again, because humanity is messy, and then try again, but you get stronger. And the effort is worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it for ourselves. It's worth it for our relationships. It's worth it for our sanity. It's worth it for our blood pressure. It's worth it for our physical health. And it's worth it to help strengthen our bonds. So
that is a perfect way to end our podcast, Dr. Angie. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about mental wellness, why it's important, why we need to have joy and love, and just why we need to thrive and not just exist. Because I think so many of us get caught up in, well, this is a habit, I'm just doing it, and you're just miserable. And science has shown the connection between being miserable and illnesses, whether it's anxiety, whether it's stress, all of that wears your body down. And
it does.
And lots of families will tell you, yeah, we have high blood pressure in our family, and we have diabetes, and we have this. And I said, you probably have some bad habits in there too that you need to work on. So this is very important that we continue to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Dr. Angie. Now tell us where we can find you. Tell us all about all the things that you have going on, because you have a lot.
Yeah, I do. I have a lot going on. Okay, so on the music side of what I'm doing, I'm still teaching at Metro Detroit and Marygrove Conservancy. And I do teach in person, but feel free to contact me at Celeste. So that's CEL. See my middle name, my main name, Celeste. At Celeste MUS, which is short for music. So contact me at Celeste MUS on the number 1 at AOL.com. And if you're in the area and you'd like to have music lessons, voice lessons or piano lessons, and my brother in my studio teaches drumming as well. I have done some virtual teaching of piano as well. So, contact me if you like. And I coach fellow professional vocalists also. So there's that. I just sang recently. So, and I've got something coming up that someone asked me about that he's still planning that event. So, so I'm performing and writing, writing new material and stuff, musically. On the psychology side of what I'm doing right now, of course, as you said, I have my company with my sister, A.M. May and Associates Incorporated, and we do counseling, consulting, and coaching. So go to our website at amaassociates.com. And also, as far as the coaching, when you go to that website, you'll see we do professional, personal, creative coaching for fellow creatives, because we're both creative people, and doctoral coaching, which I do as well. So you'll see our programs there. We have 2 things that are coming up now in October, starting October. We have our women's mastermind group, And so again, you can go to amaassociates.com to get more information about that. You can also go to our Facebook page, which is Angela and Michelle on Facebook, AMA Associates on Facebook, to get the information about signing up for our women's mastermind. It starts October 10th. We will meet every other Monday virtually on Zoom at 7 p.m. And you get all the details when you go to the Facebook page, go to the website, go to our Instagram, AMA Associates, same thing. But we are welcoming women who are leaders, whether they have their own company, entrepreneurs, or whether they're working for someone else, regardless. And regardless of their industry or background, we really help them take their work to the next level. So we meet from October into February. So it's an 8-week stretch, but every other week. So that's starting in October. My stress management coaching group for Black men is going to be starting also. It starts next week, Tuesday. That meets every Tuesday in October. And I created it specifically for helping Black men in particular learn how to recognize stress in their own lives, the difference between toxic stress. A lot of people know that don't know that there's such thing as positive stress, good stress. So the difference between good stress and toxic stress. So there's a lot of learning that takes place in it, but also, which is really cool about my program, is that each individual member learns how he uniquely responds to stress mentally, physically, emotionally. We look at the spiritual aspects. We learn about what ways in which he responds to stress that may be harming him and his relationships professionally and personally, and some positive, alternatives. So there's a lot there. I record each session. And so they get that as part of what they're paying for. And all together, it's like 26 plus slides. We have a private Facebook group in that as well. So there's the community, there's the support. Then I give handouts, mental exercises, things they can apply immediately to help start to make a difference. So I'm excited about that. Go to again, you can go to my website, my Facebook page, I should say, Angela Celeste May. You can go to AMA and Associates Facebook. You can go to Instagram, Angela Celeste May. It's just Angela Celeste May everywhere. You get that information. So that's what's going on in the company at the moment. What else? Of course, there is my book, which is, again, Freedom. That is available at Amazon.com and Ex Libris also with an X, that's the publisher. And let me just, before I forget, read off the rest. Anything I didn't finish about where I am in the world. Okay, so I mentioned Facebook and Instagram, of course, Angela Celeste May. I have a Facebook music page for the music parts of what I do, and that's Dr. Angela Celeste May. Told you about the website already and the rest of the socials. The only other thing I'll mention is YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's primarily dedicated to music and like learning about music. I have my vocal quick tips series. I've got like 40 plus videos on that, lots of different stuff about using the voice, and a little bit about the psych stuff that I do, but mostly music. And reverbnation.com/Angela Celeste May. You can also go there to purchase my albums and the singles from my previous work as well, and find out what I'm doing next. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Angie, for coming on and talking to us about mental wellness, the importance of it, and why it is important that we should be thriving in joy and love. We can't wait to see you next month for another exciting topic.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy this conversation. Very necessary.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. You know me as your host, Kim B. Davis. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, everywhere on social media. And it's Kimberly Batchelor Davis. Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. You can learn more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you'll join us on our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.